What happens when Hollywood's biggest ego collides with late-night television's most beloved host? In just 37 seconds, one arrogant outburst would turn a friendly chat into the most shocking ejection in talk show history. The studio lights were blazing that evening. Graham Norton sat in his signature chair, that warm smile on his face, ready to welcome his guest. The audience was buzzing with excitement. They had no idea they were about to witness television history. Idris Elba walked onto the stage. The crowd erupted in applause. He waved, but there was something different about him tonight. Something off. He didn't have that usual charm. Instead, there was an edge to his walk, a tension in his shoulders. Graham stood up to greet him, extending his hand. "Welcome, welcome. So lovely to have you here." Idris barely shook his hand. He dropped onto the couch without waiting for Graham to sit back down first. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Graham's smile flickered for just a moment, but he recovered quickly. Always the professional. "Well, someone's comfortable," Graham joked, trying to lighten the mood. The audience laughed nervously. Idris didn't laugh. He leaned back, spreading his arms across the back of the couch like he owned the place. "Yeah, well, I've done 1,000 of these things. You kind of stop caring about the formalities." Graham's eyebrows raised slightly. 1,000? My goodness, that's quite a lot. Though I have to say, we try to make ours a bit special here. "Sure," Idris said, looking around the studio with a dismissive expression. They all say that. The tension was already building, and they were barely 2 minutes in. Graham, ever the professional, pushed forward. "So, let's talk about your new film. I hear it's absolutely brilliant. You play a detective who—" "Can we not do the boring promotional stuff right away?" Idris interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. "I mean, the audience doesn't want to hear me drone on about plot points they can read on the internet." Graham's smile tightened. "Well, actually, I think they do want to hear about it. That's rather why you're here, isn't it?" A few audience members gasped quietly. Graham Norton never got sharp with guests. Never. But Idris had just disrespected not only him, but the entire format of the show. Idris scoffed. "I'm here because my publicist told me I had to be. Let's be honest, Graham. Your show is fine, but it's not exactly groundbreaking television, is it?" The studio went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Graham's face remained calm, but his eyes showed something else. Hurt, maybe, or anger. Probably both. "I see," Graham said slowly, his voice measured. "Well, I'm terribly sorry our little show doesn't meet your standards. Perhaps we should talk about something you do find worthy of your time." "Don't get sensitive on me," Idris said, laughing in a way that felt cruel. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. These talk shows are all the same. Same questions, same fake laughs, same boring format." Graham leaned forward. "You know what's interesting? I've had hundreds of guests on this couch. Huge stars, legends, icons, and not one of them has ever felt the need to insult me or this show while sitting on it." "Maybe they were just being fake," Idris shot back. "I'm being real with you." "No," Graham said firmly. "You're being rude. There's a difference." The audience started applauding. They were on Graham's side. Idris looked around, seeming genuinely surprised that people weren't supporting him. "Oh, come on," Idris said to the audience. "You're really going to clap for that? You people just clap for anything he says." Graham stood up now. "Right. That's quite enough. I think you need to show a bit of respect. To me, to this show, and especially to this audience who came here excited to see you." Idris stood up too, getting right in Graham's face. "Respect? You want to talk to me about respect? Do you know who I am? Do you know what I've accomplished?" "I know exactly who you are," Graham said, his voice steady and strong. "And right now, you're someone who's behaving abhorrently on my show." "Your show?" Idris laughed mockingly. "This isn't your show. This is a corporate machine that could replace you tomorrow and nobody would care." The audience gasped louder this time. Some people even booed. Graham's face went red, but he kept his composure. "I'm going to ask you one more time," Graham said quietly. "Please sit down, and let's try to have a civil conversation. Or you can leave." "Maybe I don't want to sit down," Idris said, crossing his arms. "Maybe I'm tired of playing these stupid games." Graham turned to someone off camera. "Can we get security, please?" "Security?" Idris laughed incredulously. "You're calling security on me? This is a joke." "What's a joke is how you've conducted yourself," Graham said. "I gave you a chance to be respectful. You chose not to take it." Two security guards appeared from the wings. The audience was completely silent now, watching in shock as this scene unfolded. "Don't you dare touch me," Idris said to the guards, holding up his hands. "Do you know how much I'm worth? I could buy this entire studio." "Money doesn't buy you the right to treat people poorly," Graham said. "Now, you can walk out with dignity, or these gentlemen will escort you out. Your choice." Idris looked around the studio, finally seeming to realize that he'd gone too far, but instead of apologizing, he doubled down. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "I've been on shows 10 times bigger than this, and nobody's ever treated me like this." "Perhaps because you've never behaved like this," Graham replied. "But I suspect that's not true, is it?" Idris's jaw clenched. "You're going to regret this, Graham. You have no idea who you're messing with." Graham laughed, but it was a sad laugh. "Is that a threat? Really? That's where we're going with this?" "It's not a threat," Idris said. "It's a fact. You just made a very big mistake." One of the security guards stepped closer. "Sir, we need you to come with us now." "Get your hands off me!" Idris shouted, even though the guard hadn't touched him. "I'm leaving. I don't need you to escort me anywhere." He started walking toward the exit, but then stopped and turned back to Graham. "You know what your problem is? You think you're better than everyone else. You sit up here in your little chair, making your little jokes, and you judge people." Graham shook his head. "I don't judge people, but I do expect basic decency and respect. Apparently, that's too much to ask from you." "I'm a serious actor," Idris shouted. "I don't have to sit here and be insulted by some talk show host." "Nobody insulted you," Graham said, his voice rising for the first time. "You came on here and insulted me, my show, and my audience. We welcomed you with open arms, and you spat in our faces." The audience erupted in applause again, standing this time. Graham held up his hand to quiet them down. "Please," he said gently to the audience, "let's not make this worse." But Idris wasn't done. "You think you're so clever, don't you? With your witty comebacks and your adoring fans. Well, let me tell you something, Graham. In 5 years, nobody will remember your name, but they'll still be watching my films." Graham smiled sadly. "Perhaps you're right, but at least people will remember me as someone who treated others with kindness. Can you say the same?" That hit a nerve. Idris's face contorted with rage. "How dare you? You don't know anything about me." "I know what you've shown me tonight," Graham said, "and it's not pretty." Idris took a step toward Graham, and the security guards immediately moved between them. "That's enough," one of the guards said firmly. "You need to leave now, sir." "Fine!" Idris yelled. "I didn't want to be on this pathetic show anyway." He stormed toward the exit, but Graham called out one more time. "Idris, wait." Idris stopped and turned around, a sneer on his face. "What?" Graham's voice was softer now, almost sad. "I genuinely hope you figure out whatever it is that's making you behave this way. Because this isn't you. At least, I hope it isn't." For a brief moment, something flickered across Idris's face. Shame, maybe. Regret. But it disappeared as quickly as it came. "Save your psychology for someone who cares," he said coldly. Then he looked at the audience. "You people are sheep, following whatever this guy tells you to think. It's pathetic." The boos came instantly, loud and sustained. The audience had turned completely against him. "That's it," Graham said, his voice firm again. "Get him out of here." The security guards moved in, and this time Idris didn't resist. He walked toward the exit with his head held high, trying to maintain some dignity, but everyone could see through it. Just before he disappeared backstage, he turned one last time. "You haven't seen the last of me, Graham." "I certainly hope I have," Graham replied quietly. And with that, Idris Elba was gone. The studio remained silent for a long moment. Graham stood there, looking shaken but composed. He turned to face the audience. "Well," he said, trying to force a smile. "That was unexpected." The audience erupted in supportive applause. They cheered for Graham, showing him the love and respect that Idris had refused to give. Graham held up his hands. Thank you. But really, there's no need. I just expect people to be kind. Is that so much to ask?" "No!" several audience members shouted. Graham nodded, looking genuinely emotional. "Thank you. That means a lot." He took a deep breath. "Right. Well, we still have a show to do, don't we? Let me see if we can get our next guest out here a bit early." He walked back to his chair and sat down, visibly trying to compose himself. The cameras caught everything. His hands were shaking slightly as he picked up his note cards. "I have to be honest with you all," he said to the audience. "In all my years of doing this show, I've never had to remove a guest before. It's not something I ever wanted to do." The audience gave him another round of supportive applause. "But I won't tolerate someone coming on here and disrespecting all of you," Graham continued. "You take time out of your lives to come here, to support this show, to laugh with us, and share in these moments. And you deserve better than what just happened." A woman in the front row shouted, "We love you, Graham." He smiled, and this time it was genuine. "I love you too, all of you. Now let's try to salvage this evening, shall we?" The stage manager rushed over and whispered something in Graham's ear. He nodded and turned back to the audience. "Right, so apparently our next guest is ready to come out now. And I promise you they're lovely, absolutely lovely. So let's give them a proper welcome, shall we?" The audience cheered as the show tried to move forward, but everyone knew what they'd just witnessed. The moment when Graham Norton, the kindest host on television, had finally had enough. The moment when a Hollywood star's ego had gotten so out of control that he'd talked himself right off one of the most popular talk shows in the world. Graham had given Idris every chance, every opportunity to correct course, to show some humility, to just be decent. But Idris had chosen differently. He'd chosen to be confrontational, disrespectful, and ultimately cruel. And Graham had responded with grace and dignity, even as he firmly showed Idris the door. The next guest came out, and Graham welcomed them with his usual warmth. But there was something in his eyes, a weariness that hadn't been there before, a disappointment in human nature that he'd tried so hard to avoid. Throughout the rest of the show, Graham was professional and charming. He made the audience laugh. He asked thoughtful questions. He did everything he always did. But everyone watching could tell that something had shifted, that the Idris incident had affected him deeply. During a commercial break, cameras caught Graham rubbing his temples, looking exhausted. A producer came over to check on him, and he waved them away with a smile, always putting others first, always maintaining composure. When the next guest asked if he was okay, Graham simply said, "I'm fine, just disappointed, that's all. You always hope for the best in people." The audience heard this and applauded again. They wanted him to know they supported him, that they saw what had happened, and they were on his side. As the show moved into its final segment, Graham addressed what had happened one more time. "I know we've had a bit of an unusual evening," he said, "and I'm sure many of you are wondering what you just witnessed. The truth is, I'm wondering the same thing." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I believe in giving people chances. I believe in kindness and understanding, but I also believe in boundaries. And when someone crosses those boundaries repeatedly, when they show disrespect to you, lovely people, well, I have to draw a line. The audience gave him a standing ovation. He stood and bowed slightly, genuinely touched by their support. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you so much. This is why I do this show. For you. Because of you. And I promise, I will always stand up for you." More applause. More cheers. Graham wiped at his eyes quickly, trying to hide the tears that were forming. "Right. Enough of that," he said, laughing. "Let's end this show on a high note, shall we?" The band started playing, and Graham danced a little, trying to bring the energy back up. The audience joined in, clapping along. Slowly, the mood in the studio shifted from tense to celebratory. They were celebrating Graham, celebrating his integrity, celebrating the fact that he'd stood up for what was right. As the show came to a close, Graham gave his final remarks. "Thank you all so much for being here tonight. Despite the drama, or perhaps because of it, this has been a night we won't soon forget. Remember to be kind to each other. Life's too short for anything else." The audience cheered one last time as the credits rolled. Graham waved goodbye, and as soon as the cameras stopped recording, he collapsed back into his chair, exhausted. The studio audience filed out, buzzing with conversation about what they'd just witnessed. They pulled out their phones, already texting friends and family about the incredible scene they'd seen live. Some were recording video messages, describing every detail of the confrontation. Backstage, the crew gathered around Graham, offering support and congratulations for how he'd handled the situation. He thanked each of them personally, making sure everyone knew he appreciated them. "That was intense," one of the producers said, "but you handled it perfectly." Graham shook his head. "I don't know about perfectly. I just did what felt right in the moment." "That's what made it perfect," another crew member said. "You were authentic. You were real. And you protected the integrity of this show." Graham smiled weakly. "I just wish it hadn't come to that. I really wanted to have a nice conversation with him. Find out what he's been up to. Share some laughs. That's what this show is supposed to be about." "You can't control how guests behave," the producer reminded him. "You can only control how you respond. And you responded with class." The makeup artist came over to help Graham remove his stage makeup. As she worked, he sat quietly, reflecting on the evening. His mind kept replaying the confrontation, wondering if there was something he could have said or done differently to prevent the escalation. But deep down, he knew the truth. Some people come into situations looking for conflict. Some people are so wrapped up in their own importance that they can't see how they're affecting others. Idris had been that person tonight, and no amount of kindness or patience from Graham could have changed that. A stagehand approached Graham nervously. Sir? Idris's team is asking if you'd be willing to talk to him. They say he wants to apologize." Graham looked up sharply. "Is he still here?" "Yes, sir. He's in his dressing room." Graham thought for a moment, then shook his head. "No, I don't think that would be helpful right now. Maybe in time, but not tonight. Tonight, I need to decompress and process what happened. And honestly, I think he does too." The stagehand nodded and left to relay the message. Graham finished removing his makeup and changed into his regular clothes. He said goodbye to the remaining crew members and headed for the exit. As he walked through the studio, he passed by Idris's dressing room. The door was closed, but he could hear muffled voices inside. He paused for just a moment, considering whether to knock. But then he remembered the look on Idris's face, the cruel words, the complete lack of remorse. And he kept walking. Outside, the cool night air felt refreshing. Graham took a deep breath, letting the tension of the evening finally release from his shoulders. His driver was waiting by the car. "Rough night, sir?" the driver asked sympathetically. "You could say that," Graham replied, sliding into the back seat. You could definitely say that. As the car pulled away from the studio, Graham looked back at the building one more time. In all his years of hosting, through all the interviews and all the guests, he'd never experienced anything quite like tonight. He'd never had to physically remove someone from his show. Never had to stand up to such blatant disrespect in front of a live audience. But he'd done it. He'd held his ground. He'd protected his show, his audience, and his own dignity. And while it hadn't been pleasant, it had been necessary. Tomorrow, the incident would be all over the news. People would dissect every word, every gesture. They'd take sides and share opinions. But Graham knew the truth. He knew what had happened in that studio. And he knew he'd done the right thing. The car drove through the quiet streets. Graham closed his eyes, finally allowing himself to feel everything he'd been holding back during the show. The anger, the hurt, the disappointment, but also the pride, the satisfaction of knowing he'd stood up for what was right. When he got home, he poured himself a drink and sat in his favorite chair. The house was quiet, peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos of the evening. His phone started buzzing with messages from friends and colleagues who'd heard what happened, words of support, messages of solidarity, everyone telling him he'd done the right thing. He read through them slowly, grateful for the support, but also feeling tired. So tired. Not just physically, but emotionally. The weight of the confrontation was finally catching up to him. But as he sat there, in the quiet of his home, one thought kept returning to his mind. The look on the audience's faces when they'd stood up for him. The love and support they'd shown. That's what mattered. Not the drama, not the conflict, but the connection he had with those people who came to see him every week. That's what made it all worthwhile. That's what made tonight's difficult decision the right one. Because he'd shown them that their respect mattered, that their time mattered, that they mattered, and in the end, that was the only thing that truly counted.